don't have a corkscrew. I need a corkscrew. Turns out I don't have a corkscrew, but I do have something stronger. Because if I'm going to be talking about gender politics on the internet, it's going to be a long night. Cheers. Tastes like patriarchy. Now, all jokes and paraphernalia that will get me kicked out of this apartment aside, there really is something rotten with the state of the internet, and it's the way it treats women. For those of you who are familiar with the rules of the internet, whether you consider them official or unofficial, you will probably recognize Rule 37. Rule 37 states that there are no girls on the internet. That's news to me. Now, these particular set of rules are considered outdated, and you don't really hear them referenced anymore, especially like not outside of 4chan in 2008. But the thing is that by internet standards, we consider that those rules archaic, but we still kind of act by them because women experience a lot of erasure or discrimination on the internet, and we kind of already face that enough in real life. So now we're facing it in like the world of cyberland. What are we supposed to do now? And I wanted to talk about this because one, I identify myself as a woman, and two, because I've been surfing the internet by myself since I was 10 years old. So I have 12 years of experience under my belt of surfing the web. And in internet years, that's a long time. The point of this video is to sort of dissect what it's like being a girl on the internet, what that experience could mean for people, and how it affects them negatively, or how it doesn't. So while this video is supposed to have research, and it does, it's also very anecdotal, because I feel like the best research conducted in this case for this sort of scenario, it's better to have experiences from real people, not just numbers or statistics or sort of pop psychobabble. So I wanted to start off this video by talking about my own personal experiences on the internet. So as I said, I've been on the internet by myself since I was 10 years old, and no, I did not ask my parents' permission to go online. I was sort of a latchkey kid. Not that my parents weren't there per se. My father works nights and my mother works during the day. And so I was kind of left to my own devices a lot of the time. And my mother had a computer in her office that I was allowed to use, and it was just sort of implied that I would use good judgment. And for the most part I did, because I don't even remember the sites that I used to go when I was 10. Honestly, I don't. I just remember, I was in the 5th grade and I could do stuff like that. But as I got older, I found a lot of sites that weren't necessarily age appropriate. For example, the website Ill Will Press, which hosts the cartoon Neurotically Yours, or people know it more colloquially as Foamy the Squirrel. Now, for those who don't know, Foamy the Squirrel is a very loud, foul-mouthed, squeaky little squirrel thing. My mother was not pleased that I was a 6th grade girl that was listening to a squirrel that swears all the time and talks about carbs. But Foamy kind of inspired me. I realized through Foamy that I had a voice and that I could use it. My go-to thing was to sort of rant a lot. Not necessarily as funny as Foamy, or at all, but in a weird way, it kind of still gave me some empowerment. So then in 2006, I discovered social networking, and the first site I went on was MySpace. And I didn't like MySpace. I was very adamant that I would never get a MySpace. No, never ever getting a MySpace. So then when I got a MySpace between the summers of freshman and sophomore year of high school, I added a bunch of my friends that I knew from high school and middle school. Always fun to see, when you log in, you see new friend requests, new picture comments, new comments. Yay! You're popular. You're acknowledged. It was the first time that on the internet I felt like I had some kind of presence, even if it was only within my small group of friends. After I was on MySpace for about 6 months, two of my friends who weren't on MySpace told me about Facebook. And I was kind of hesitant to sign up for Facebook because I already had MySpace and the two seemed redundant. But I signed up for Facebook anyway, and as it turns out, there were way more people than I expected to be on Facebook as opposed to MySpace. I wasn't the only person that was becoming disillusioned with it. I still liked MySpace, but the Facebook format was, I don't know, it was kind of cleaner. It had features that MySpace didn't have, like poking. Revolutionary, right? You don't even have to ask them out anymore. You poke them, and you know what that means. They're an internet nuisance. But Facebook seemed to be a much more streamlined version of MySpace. Because MySpace at this point seemed kind of juvenile. Like, I didn't really have much use for it anymore. And then after I signed up for Facebook, I found out about Twitter. Twitter was like the stupidest thing in the world. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? We already have Facebook status updates that had a character limit, so what was the point of Twitter? I signed up for it twice, and then deleted it twice, and then I signed up for it a third time, and I still have that account. It's more sort of like a throwaway thought process than, say, Facebook. Like Facebook, you'll find yourself sort of planning status updates. Or maybe that's just me because I'm sad. Twitter's like the post-it note of social media. You write something down, you can throw it away, or you can put it somewhere else later and you'll find it and you'll be like, how drunk was I when I wrote that? The answer is usually very. After sort of the boom in 2008, when suddenly all the moms and dads and grandmas were signing up for it now, Twitter sort of became an escape. I was able to be a little more foul-mouthed, a little more crass on Twitter as opposed to Facebook. And it became a better outlet. And I respected it for that. And then after that, I discovered Tumblr. And now my life is ruined. The thing about Tumblr is that it's a microblogging website. And that was especially important to me because the format is very easy to use. Plus, the content that is generated every day is staggering. Especially original content. It's the easiest way in the world to get your stuff shared. It's also the easiest way in the world to get your stuff stolen. But in any case, the point I'm trying to make here is that with one discovery of a social network site, it quickly launched into discovery of more. So now that I've discovered all these websites, I'm discovering all of these other people that are outside of my circle of people that I choose to have in my real life. On the internet, you tend to not be as stringent. You hear all of those PSAs that are like, don't talk to strangers on the internet. Well, how are you supposed to make friends anyway? Everyone's a stranger until you meet them. Problem is, though, is that logic is not very practical on the internet because we've heard so many stories about how kids are molested via MySpace or Facebook or Craigslist or any of those other sites. And it becomes very dangerous very quickly, especially if you are a woman. And so as I was expanding sort of how many people I was interacting with on social media websites, I was also uncovering a very dark side of the internet as well. A side that doesn't really like women that much, or at least they don't respect them as they should. And it's very disconcerting because, in my sort of comfy middle class life where I'm actually much more privileged than I ever imagined, I realized that, misogyny exists on all sorts of levels. And it's not always somebody catcalling you while you're walking at night. It's somebody who wants to kill you because you identify yourself as not a man. So this all comes back to Rule 37. Now, when I was a freshman in college, I spent most of my time on 4chan, for which, if you don't know what 4chan is, it is a image board that was created by a guy named Christopher Poole who goes by Moot. It has all sorts of different categories. There's an anime category, politics, videos, video games, paranormal, but there's one board in particular that remains the most famous and the most infamous, and that is the /B/board, also known as B, also known as random. It is one of the 18 plus boards, so you have to be 18 or older to go in. Not that that's ever stopped anybody. The only rule is that you can't post child porn. And that's it. So basically nothing illegal. But child porn is considered the most illegal. As well it should be. I spent most of my time on B during the 2009-2010 school year. If you know anything about B, it's kind of the cesspool, like the lowest common denominator of the internet. The way that 4chan works is that you're able to post anonymously. Now, in recent years, that has changed because now each poster has a unique ID that's sort of a jumbled mixture of letters and numbers. But you're still anonymous in the sense that it's hard to tell who exactly you are. So that was my first foray into the truly anonymous part of the internet, where you had something to hide behind. For some people, who they really are is awful. There was one thread where I posted a photo of myself, which don't ever do that. Just for, if nothing else, this video can serve as a warning to others of what not to do ever on the internet. I posted a picture of myself, and I forget why. I think I was having a low self-esteem day, also known as every day during that year. Somebody took the liberty of photoshopping my face onto a killer whale. Get it, guys? I'm fat. Clever. But actually, I kept it sort of like as like this masochistic kind of reminder of why you should remain anonymous on the internet sometimes. And I guess as a weight loss motivator. But not that that worked. Fried rice is really good, guys. I'm sorry. But there are two things that really kind of disturb me more about that. Is one, how quickly that Photoshop picture appeared in the thread. Really, they're like Quick Draw McGraw with Photoshop now. It's crazy. But also, it just, like, that was the first thing that came to somebody's mind. Was that, hey, let's take this picture of somebody I don't know and Photoshop their face onto a killer whale. It's kind of art in a way. It's really offensive and immature art. But, you know, you're taking two things and saying something else entirely with them. And that's interesting to me in a really weird, masochistic kind of way. Now, another part of the anonymous culture on B was the idea of separating anonymous with what they would call feminons, which were women and girls who would browse 4chan. And for some reason, people would get really angry if you ever distinguished yourself as a feminine because of, one, Rule 37, because this was during a time when people actually upheld the rules of the internet, including myself. And I would always get really mad at women who would just start their posts with feminine here. I was like, who cares? Why do you feel the need to like disingenuate yourself from the collective? And so many years later, I realize why that's important, because we don't want to necessarily associate ourselves with a collective who is so poisonous towards the female community. And I remembered I would start posts with feminine here occasionally because I felt, only when I felt it was necessary. Like, for example, if I had a story that was relatable, but it was relatable because I was a woman, that's when I would reveal myself. But even then, people just think your gender is irrelevant. And then a more recent example of this, I had signed up for Reddit 2 years ago, and Benedict Cumberbatch, who is a really awesome British actor, did an AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything session, which a lot of famous or well-known or interesting people will do. And you can ask them anything, and hopefully they will answer. So Benedict Cumberbatch did one about, I think, a couple months ago, and it's really hard to differentiate between internet time and real time. I just sat at the table and was just refreshing over and over. And until I found it, and I saw it pop up. It was 2 minutes in, and there were 500 comments already. Right. But I left my comment anyway. I left my question, and I was like, whatever. He's not going to see it, but at least I tried. So then I go to work, and it was about half an hour later. I refresh it again. I'm still sitting at just 1 point. Because the way the Reddit system works is you can upvote posts that are relevant to the discussion, or you can downvote if they're irrelevant. Or, as everyone else does it, if you agree with it, you can upvote, or if you disagree, you can downvote, which is not how it's supposed to work. But hey, again, who follows rules? I refreshed again a couple hours later, and I saw a notification, and it says, you have new Reddit mail, so I click on it, and there was a new comment sitting there from the Benedict Cumberbatch account that had an answer to my question. And I was like, holy crap! Benedict Cumberbatch answered my question. I was like in the middle of the mall just like, ah. So, and then I saw that the upvote count had been up in the thousands, and was like the 5th highest rated comment on the thread, which was awesome. I was like, holy crap, 1,500 people thought that I had something to add to this discussion, or they agreed with me, and so it gained visibility, and then he was able to answer it. That's awesome. It's the closest I'll get probably to ever actually meeting him in real life, and it meant a lot to me. So I edited my comment soon after, and I said, oh my goodness, you've just made this fangirl's day, or something to that effect. The point is I used fangirl, and it pissed off somebody. So the comment read something like, you know, oh my god, why did you say you're a fangirl? Like, who cares? Like, what is that adding to anything? You're such a karma whore. Because the voting system is called gaining karma. So you get good karma with the more points you have, you get bad karma with less points that you have. Now, to me, karma's not a big deal. You know, you can accumulate a lot, and that's cool to some people. But to me, it doesn't really matter. All karma says to me is that if you have a lot of karma, you create posts that generate good content. Or in other cases, you just create comments that pander to the crowd. Whatever. To me, that's not a big deal. But to some people, karma is a big deal. And especially to this user who was apparently calling me out for being a karma whore. And I was so indignant. I was like, what makes you think that imaginary internet points make any difference to me? And then it just got into this whole like back and forth bullshit debacle. It was like, you're a karma whore. I'm so much smarter than you. No, you're not. And I'm just, neither one of us was smart enough to leave. Finally, I was just like, whatever, man. I'm not going to change your mind. I've said my piece. I'm out. Mic drop. But it just wasn't enough, and he just kept taunting me, and I was like, stop. I'm so over it. That's just not enough for some people. And then it turns out I'm not alone. So going back to Rule 37, which is no girls on the internet, I wanted to read for you guys the entry from Encyclopedia Dramatica, which is a satirical website that's set up like Wikipedia, but it's a Wikipedia for internet culture. Now, I have long since learned to take stuff I read on the internet with a grain of salt, especially satirical stuff. As you sort of traverse through the lands of social justice warriors and armchair political pundits, you kind of learn to rewire yourself because ultimately you become desensitized to what you read on the internet, especially stuff that presents itself as satire. But in this case, satire can be damaging. This is from their entry, No Girls on the Internet. The origins of the phrase, there are no girls on the internet, are lost in the sands of time. It is worth noting that when speaking of girls on the internet, one is speaking of actual internet users actually tickling a keyboard, a euphemism for masturbation. If you are speaking in terms of JPEGs, GIFs, and videos, then the internet is almost entirely girls with only a few exceptions. Actually, everything you read in this article is bullshit written by a basement inhabitant. There are absolutely no girls on the internet. No exceptions. So already, the tone of this article is kind of one of self-loathing because it refers to people who write this kind of stuff as a basement inhabitant, and that's actually a really common euphemism that's used, like basement dweller. You know, the implication is that men who use the internet, who believe stuff like this, live in their parents' basement and don't contribute to society, and they're generally just disgusting slobs. There's a section of the article there's a big bold headline that says, do not upset e-girls. No matter how fat, no matter how annoying, no matter how stupid, how slutty, how fucking shitful a girl on the internet is, there will be a tribe of white knights to defend her from any real or perceived slight. This will each and every way lead to drama, either through swarm attacks on any outsider who attempts to pop the female's ever-growing ego, or the never-ending infighting as the virgin tribe attempt to win favor with whatever blubbery cake monster they've barnacled themselves into. The golden rule can at any time be ignored for lulz. Please also refer to girl on the internet syndrome. And the point, it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be an intriguing insight into the mind of people who actually kind of think this way, and it's kind of scary. Obviously, nobody believes that there aren't girls on the internet because that isn't practical at all. Obviously, we make up half the population, we're gonna be around on the internet. I'd actually spoken to several people on various sites about this kind of thing, and they all their stories were basically the same, that they had felt marginalized in some way because they were female, or they felt that they weren't taken seriously. For example, one Redditor had told me of when she had signed up for a writing website, and her stories were averaging around a 2 out of 5 with their rating system. And when she had created an account with the same exact content, but listed as a male user, she was suddenly getting 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, on the exact same content she had posted on her original profile where she was listed as a woman. A lot of the anecdotes that I collected from different women across various social networking websites was that people would immediately dismiss anything they had to say. Like, oh, you're a girl, so you don't really understand. And I had found that my experience was the same way. And it's especially prevalent in dating websites because you have that barrier of a computer and a server between you. You feel like you can be as creepy as utterly possible. I had signed up for OkCupid in December of 2011, and I had the account for about a year and a half, and I finally deleted it because I wasn't getting anything out of it. Well, at least anything positive. And I talked to some nice people sometimes, but most of the messages were just creepy, were very low effort, and it was weird. And the response I kept getting was, well, I don't get any messages. At least you're getting messages. What really makes you think that, low quality messages are better than no messages at all? I don't really need people telling me that any psychological problems I have can just be cured with their dick. And unfortunately, my experience is not unique. So now the question remains, what on earth am I trying to get at here? Sometimes I don't know, because if I start throwing around words like patriarchy or, marginalization or erasure, then people just automatically tune out and they're dismissive. Because, the patriarchy, what does that even mean? Well, it means that in a male-dominated society, there are things that are set up to sort of systematically marginalize women. And it exists on the World Wide Web as well as the worldwide world. So I think it's just really important to remember that it's dangerous out there. And it sucks that we have to take precautions in how we sort of carry ourselves on the internet because we're in fear that we won't be taken seriously or we'll be harassed or stalked or whatever. There's so many horror stories out there. I think the biggest thing of what I'm trying to get at is that there really, really is a dire need for a paradigm shift in the way, we treat women on the internet, because they are still people. And contrary to popular belief, we do exist on the internet and we're not going away. If you're a guy and you decide to harass a woman because they're a woman, don't. And if you are a guy and you don't harass women, continue being a decent person. I'm not going to say good job or have a cookie because that's to be expected of you. But I will say that you can also do your part by continuing to not be a dick, but also if you see harassment or anything like that, call them out. Be like, hey, that's not cool. And then if the aggressor calls you a white knight or some sort of lame internet terminology that assumes that you have no backbone, who cares? I mean, if being a white knight is the worst thing that you're called, it's a good day. So overall, I just really want to stress that this subject is important to me as a woman and also as somebody who uses the internet on a daily basis, is kind of unhealthily immersed in it, and just wants the best experience possible, not just for me, but for all women of all colors, creeds, biological, whatever's going on. Because as I said, there's something rotten in the state of the internet, but together we can Febreze the shit out of it and make it enjoyable for everyone. Cheers!